Alright, what's up guys, it's KOSDFF here, and today I wanted to try something a little different. I woke up this morning and I really wanted to do a story video, but for the life of me, I couldn't think of like one story that could like take up a whole video, and the few that I did, I'm just not quite ready to share with you guys yet. So don't worry if you think my well of stories have kind of like dried up. They haven't. I'm just, working towards, telling you guys about certain things. And moreover, I tell a lot of stories about my past, and although I haven't seen a lot of these people for like 7 years or something in most cases, somehow they still find the videos. So I might have to like rethink how I tell the stories. I might have to change some names and things like that. It's either that, I need to tell all these people from my past to quit stalking my shit. But anyways, I did think of like a million tiny little stories that I could talk about for like a minute or so, because they're just like funny happenstances. And I was like, you know what, I bet I could just put a whole bunch of those in one video, but I couldn't really think of like what order to tell them in because it's not one just big story. So I figured I'd kind of try the format that we use in our other videos, and I just tweeted out, hey, what kind of stories you guys want to hear? So I'm just going to tell you guys a whole bunch about a couple of the little things you guys have asked me about. Now, of course, I got spammed with the losing your virginity video idea because my dude Ham made one, and well, frankly, that story just isn't as exciting for me as it was for him, because I wasn't a famous skateboarder who had rock stars buying me strippers. That's how Ham lost his virginity, and I very highly recommend you guys go see that video because it's ridiculous. And not that I don't have a nice losing my virginity story, because I do. It's just, I'll probably have to change some names, because that person might see the video, and I feel like that's something very private that's supposed to not be talked about on the internet. So I might work up to doing that story eventually, but we're not going to talk about it today. But the first one comes from Craphole456, and he said, I don't know if you already did this, but tell a story about a near-death experience. Now, I haven't had a whole lot of near-death experiences. Now, I've had my ass beat a couple times, and I've been in some shitty situations, but it wasn't one of those things where I ever contemplated death. But there was a time in my life in Sydney, Australia, where me and my parents used to go diving all the time. Now, if you guys have never heard of a sport called scuba diving, you live on Mars. But basically, you strap an air canister to your back, as well as a whole bunch of weights and a vest that inflates with air, and you go underwater for extended periods of time to look at underwater shit. And when we lived in Sydney, Australia, obviously this is home to some of the best diving in the world, and my parents got totally obsessed with it, and of course I did as well. And we spent a lot of weekends going diving in and around Australia and taking dive trips and things like that. I think I've logged about 70 dives. Now, I haven't been scuba diving in a really long time, and really the only near-death experience I can tell you guys about is actually the last time I went diving. And I say that because I've never been in a car crash, I've never been in like a really rocky airplane ride, I've never been shot at or anything like that. So my like list of near-death experiences really just comes down to one, and it wasn't really near-death, but in the moment it was a possibility because I was freaking out underwater. So basically my parents and my uncle all went to Curacao to go on this dive trip, and although Curacao doesn't have all the tropical wonders of all the surrounding Caribbean islands, like many other islands in that little chain, they kind of cater towards divers, and they have these things called diving resorts where you go there, and really the whole point of being at the resort is that you can go diving all the time. They have all these diving facilities like showers and places for you to wash everything. So you can literally like leave your little house in their little compound and then just walk out on the beach and go diving, and there's stuff to see. And when we went on this trip, I don't think I had been diving in like 3 or 4 years, because we went when I believe I was in college. And I didn't do pussy dives either when we went diving. I did wreck diving, night diving, cave diving. Well, not really cave diving. We would go like, look in small little alcoves and stuff like that at night and things. And I've done, diving in extremely bad weather. I've done deep diving. So my parents were really confident that, although I hadn't dived in a really long time, that I could just pick it back up and I would just be fine. And I had the same level of confidence too, because we were just going to this like plushy little dive resort and doing a whole bunch of shore dives, which is, like I said earlier, you just walk out into the water. But nope, literally the first dive, we got underwater and we got down probably about 10 meters or 30 feet, and I started to hyperventilate underwater. And the reason why scuba diving is so scary is because one, you're underwater and you've got a tank of air, and two, if you get in trouble, you can't just swim up to the surface. If you do that, you'll get bubbles in your lungs and get the bends and eventually get really sick and die. So if you have a problem underwater, you really have to handle it underwater and then ascend slowly. So really, if there's an emergency underwater, you really are kind of trapped. You're just stuck down there and you've got to fix it down there. And I started to hyperventilate. If you guys don't know how a scuba diving tank works, you really kind of breathe in, and this regulator basically shoots air into your body. So I started taking a whole bunch of really deep, fast, panic breaths, and I just couldn't do anything. And I think we were swimming to meet up with my my dad and my mother because they went out a little earlier because I was, obviously nervous about scuba diving and was taking my time getting under. So it's just my uncle, and of course he's looking at me like, what the fuck? You've been diving longer than I have. You and your parents were the reason why I got into diving, and here you are having like a panic attack underwater, and we literally hadn't done anything. All we had done is swim down to the bottom. And of course my parents eventually came over, and they're like, throwing me the "Are you okay" symbol. There's a lot of hand signals while you're diving because obviously you can't talk to each other. So they're all throwing me this "Are you okay" sign, "Are you okay?" And I'm freaking out because I can't fucking breathe, and I can't swim up to the surface, and I know that I can't do that, so I'm just sitting there just trying to catch my breath. And well, if you can't breathe underwater, you die. So for about 5 or 10 minutes, I had a pretty serious little hyperventilating panic attack, which I definitely played down to my parents afterwards. But I think they eventually got that I was pretty scared because I haven't been diving since. And not that I'm scared of diving now, I definitely plan on going scuba diving in the future. It's just, I understood that I just hyperventilated and it wasn't that big of a deal. But yeah, that's probably the closest near-death experience I've ever had. And the next one's from @FuckDib. He said, the first time you touched a boob. To be honest, I don't even think I can remember that. I want to say it was this really tall blonde girl named Camille or this other like brunette girl named Fane, because they were kind of like the two girls that I talked to while I was there. And yeah, I can't really narrow that one down, but I'm sure it was glorious. Now that I think about it, yeah, it was probably one of those two, and it was probably at a party. And I've loved boobs ever since, and probably for a few years before it too. All right, the next one comes from @devout_TK, and he asks, how did your parents feel about YouTube when you started? They really didn't feel anything about YouTube because it was kind of like a hobby I was doing. Unlike so many other YouTubers I'm sure you guys have heard about that kind of like drop everything and really, give YouTube a go a little earlier on, I was always very worried about, getting a job and being able to support myself and stuff like that. So I did YouTube for an extremely long time before I did it full time. Now, I'm sure they looked down on it for the first couple years I was doing it because obviously I wasn't making any money doing it, and I probably should have been focusing on other stuff, and really it was taking up a very large part of my daily life. And even now I kind of agree with them. I got addicted to uploading YouTube videos back when I had like fucking no subscribers and was getting no views. It was still really fun to me, and I spent a lot of time doing it, and it took all my spare time and probably a little bit of time that I should have spent doing some other stuff, but luckily it kind of worked out. So no, I don't really think they felt anything about it at all, and if they did, they probably weren't too happy that I was doing it because they probably didn't see a future in it. My parents raised me very strictly to go to college and get a job and start a career and do that whole thing. And not that they were wrong, because I do have all that stuff to fall back on should YouTube decide to explode or my channel get deleted or something like that. But you'll be able to hear more about that soon, because I'm actually going to go visit my parents probably in a week, and I'm going to do a video with my dad, like a Q&A. And a lot of the questions you guys asked had to do with, how I started YouTube and things like that and how they felt. So I'll let him tell you when I make that video. All right, the next one comes from Jumps Appeared. He said, dumbest injury. I have a very good answer for that one. One time when I was in 6th grade, I want to say, we were running around the school in my school in Australia, and we were kind of like playing tag with these two girls, just chasing them around. And one of them, I want to say her name was like Rachel or something like that. She ran into a science room, and I was chasing her, and I was running like super fast on like one of those linoleum floors, so it was like really slippery. So when I went to take the corner and swing myself into the science lab, I grabbed the door frame, and at that exact moment, she slammed the science lab door. And if you've ever seen a science lab door, they're like extra heavy and thick, because obviously if the fucking room blows up, they don't want it to destroy the whole school or save all the kids. So these are pretty heavy duty doors, and well, when she slammed that, my hand was not in like the closing part of the door, but the hinge part of the door, and it crushed into a million pieces the ends of 2 of my fingers. I still remember that crunch sound to this day, and it fucking haunts me. And after that, I went into shock, so I didn't even feel a whole lot of pain. I literally looked down at my fingers, and they were like purple with blood spreading out everywhere, because they literally got squished, and the tips of my fingers didn't get broken into like 1 or 2 pieces. It was literally hundreds of tiny fragments of bone that had exploded into my finger. But I took it like a total bitch and cried my eyes out. My parents eventually took me to the doctor, and I got this cast put on my fingers, and I had to wear that for like forever. But I obviously made a full recovery, and I'm fine now. But yeah, that fucking hurt, and it was really stupid to think about. And the next one comes from Aaron Max78. He said, most embarrassing high school story. Now, I've already told that story, so I'll just refer you guys to that. I got in this fight and got my ass boxed by this kid that was like half my size, pretty much. He was a trained fighter, and well, I wasn't. I think the name of that video is like I got my ass beat or something like that. You guys can go watch it. All right, and the next one comes from Joan Stockstill. She says, what goes on when you're not vlogging? Are there any fighting in the TK house? Does anyone have bad feelings for one another? Not anything like serious. I think we've had a few skirmishes that that last like 2 or 3 minutes before someone cracks a joke and we just realize it's not a big deal. Obviously, everyone gets a little heated every now and then because we constantly roast each other, but these things happen like once in a blue moon, and no one really takes anything too serious. What's really great about having the group that we have is everyone keeps each other in check. No one really goes off the deep end for the most part. Basically, we keep our egos in check because there's nothing more annoying than someone that has a massive ego. Especially if you're doing YouTube. I don't care if you have 20 million subscribers or 10. You do YouTube. Like, you can't get an ego about that. It's a joke. It's for entertainment. It is almost entirely meaningless for the most part. It's not like we're curing cancer or developing rocket ships or finding ways to feed starving kids or helping people with religion or teaching people. I mean, I just don't think it's something that you can get an ego about. Like, I have a bigger ego about my scholastic accomplishments than I will ever about my YouTube. So for the most part, no, we've never really had an actual argument or an actual real fight that left two people salty for a while in the TK house. So don't worry. We're all the homies. All right, the next one's from Phantom_Grizz. He said, driving test or first time drinking? I don't know why those two things were put together, but I'll talk about the driving test. Now, I was actually really good at driving, and not because my parents spent a long time teaching me, because I think I only went out to a parking lot once with my mom and drove around for like 10 minutes, and that was pretty much it. Now, of course, they spent a lot of time with me driving after I got my learner's permit because I wanted to drive them everywhere. The actual driving test, the way I got really good at driving to be able to pass that is I used to steal both mine and my parents' cars all the time, almost like every single day. I hope they never see this video. They only really caught us once. But in North Carolina, our house had this driveway that was a massive hill. So what I would do is wait till my parents went to sleep, sneak out like I did all the time. I would get into the car and I would put it neutral and just let off the brake, back the car all the way down the driveway, all the way across the cul-de-sac, and actually start the car in my neighbor's driveway so they would think that it would be somebody else if they actually got up, which they only did once. And I stole my car because I had a Ford Explorer that my grandparents had given me. My parents also had a Suburban, and there was also a Geo Tracker, and I stole these fuckers just almost every single day. Especially because my parents worked and didn't get home till 6, and of course I got out of school at 2. So I would take my car out almost every day after school and go drive to my friend Johnny's house. It was just a thing I did. And of course I had a couple close calls in the very beginning. Like, I got stuck on this railroad beam trying to back out of my friend's driveway once. I almost put it into a ditch backing up yet again at night because I had all this window tint on my car, and then the Suburban was just fucking huge. But literally by the 3rd time I stole my parents' car, I was just a pro at driving. Like, I had no problem with it. Now, I was never speeding or doing anything crazy because I was taking SUVs, and you can't exactly race around in an SUV. It was more about, having a big old car to pick up my friends to go do some stuff with, and I just did it all the time. So I passed my driving test with like flying colors. It was no big deal. And I did it in a Suburban, so imagine having to do a 3-point turn on a tiny road in a fucking Suburban. No problem for your boy. I had done that hundreds of times before. And first time drinking, not a very fun story. I went out with my friends that I'd met in Australia, and I drank like 1 beer and got like the slightest bit tipsy and just acted drunk like so many other kids do the first time they're drinking to fit in. Because I didn't really want to get drunk, and beer tasted like shit. That was pretty much the end of that story. Nothing really happened. I just went home. Alright, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this like collection of short stories. Don't worry, I will be doing some full-length story videos here soon, but today I just really felt like doing like a Spitfire lightning round. So again, hope you guys enjoyed it. Please leave a like if you did, and I'll see you tomorrow.